we doing, guys? Sam here with you. It's Tuesday, the 8th of January here, and by request here, I've got quite a few members interested in an update on the stock indexes. So we'll take a look here. Now, I've got a 4-hour up. I'm using the continuous contract here, so we're working through this series that we see here, and it's fairly clear count here. We get a nice clean 5 coming down. This looks to me like we've just got an A, B, C into a B wave. Now, a couple of things to point out here. So you can just grab, well, we could use this. Either one of these is going to be good. They're so close together. So here's just straight, as you might anticipate, right? The S&P is incredibly algo driven. So here we have just a textbook, right? Boom, right? They sell the 50 right to target. Now it has leg. It gets through it, but that's the play. Right? They do it there. Then so is this, if you were to carry forward here, you come back. Now I don't know that I can give you a better example than that. All right. Well, let's get it right on there. Okay. So swing, retrace. Here's the reaction at the 50. We get a little that's on a 4-hour chart. That's not an insignificant. If you were a scalper, that's a what do you got there? That's 20. God damn, is that 25 points? That's 25 points. So then we go up here to the golden zone, just enough to get in it. Look, just tickle it in it to the tick. Guys, I promise you that is not happening randomly. Right? That is just, I don't know that I can give you a better example there. Right? So here's the first one. It gives you the range to pull from, golden zone, boom, down we go. Okay, so we blow. So here's a little reaction, likely the front run, a little reaction on the front run of the first target, but this has legs. So now as we try and put an Elliott count on that, kind of hard to miss that, right? So here's 5, 3, potentially now we're in a 5. Now, again, excuse me, to show you things, this is not random, right? So you might look at that and go, oh, well, if we're going to get an impulse here, well, we don't want the 4 to overlap. Right? That is just, you see these all over the place, right? There's just, I promise you that is not random. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't get through it, but that's the reason why we pivot here. So whether you're thinking with your Elliott hat in here, right? Remember, an algorithm doesn't give a shit about the Elliott count. Oh, no, we don't want it to overlap. But it's just, you could think of it as structure, right? This prior support now provides the resistance, but it conveniently, look how that fits in with an Elliott count. So if that's going to hold as the 4, so it would be, of course, it's deep relative to the 2, right? So we can recognize that, and we get through the 65. So when you see that, but holding here, I'd go back 1. See, well, was there something here that I wouldn't have noticed? So I understand, right? This little bit, benefit of hindsight. I understand that, right? But if you go through, if you're measuring here, now you can see the first little reaction here we had at the golden zone as it came to it. The fact that we get through and then get a reaction here at an obvious pivot, which would be our wave 1 pivot, right? At least proposed wave 1. I would definitely pull back 1. Right, just to see, well, where am I if I'm going now? So note here, if this were to go through, God damn, trading view pisses me off. All right, all right, there we go. It's my least favorite feature. Okay, so I can get just that to move. Okay, so the fact that we hold there, that gives me a contender. Now, if this were to go through by a tick, then we have a diagonal. Right, so the fact that it doesn't is why I go back 1. I mean, you could go back, right? You could go all the way. So where are we in these pivots? Because we know there's software written to respond to all of these. Right, so here, is it here? This is the one that I would use here. So because we hold that, so you can make a case that we're getting a reaction here at the 50 of the larger degree swing. And the swing pivot here, pivot low, providing prior support, providing the resistance. Now, that doesn't mean that we have to scream down here to go get this, but it certainly is in play. You certainly would want to know that where you are. And if you're an Elliott trader, this is well, if you look at it, so you probably make a couple of different ways you could look at this. All right, so let me get this out of the way. So it's hard to see it any other way than this. So it looks like you get 5 here, 3 here. Now, are we done? Let's get that up there. Well, you don't. Let's check a few variables here. So from here to here, right? How do we look on this side? Well, that's a little bit shallow for a B wave. No question about it. So I check a couple of these just to see how technically we're moving here. So do you see this? All right. So here they took that 50. Oh, TradingView is going to just drive me nuts here. Okay, so let's get this lined up again. All right. So here's what I was after. Here's the 50 right to the algo target. Do you see that? Right? It's just I don't know how many. I've shown it to you enough times here that hopefully you're aware that you got to know where you are with the algos. All right. So if this is a reaction here, so you could do it this two ways, right? So you could pull from this pivot now because that was in play, right? So we have this now. Here you get a one tick break of that, but we go right to target to the tick. So again, you don't know if they're changing the parameters slightly, but that is just not random, right? So it's a one tick break of the 65, but then they go up and they get the target. In fact, there's room to get further. So it would appear that these are just algos just battling it out here, one to the next. So this is it's just a judgment call you have to make there. So we immediately, as we just barely break the 65, then immediately rip through. Right, a little sloppy there, but nonetheless, there we go. They get target reaction. Right, so this is how we know. This is how we know it's an algo, not the 50. It's the reaction at the target. Right, so we know that that's selling pressure that kicks in there. But right, for whatever reason, it's got more legs here. Maybe we're going second, third target, but we are now holding here by the tick. So if this is going to trade as an ABC and we're going to have a deep 4 here and avoid going into a diagonal, I mean that's mighty close. If we're going to head down here, then we would be anticipating if that's corrective, we've got to finish this with an impulse. All right, so here's the target down here. Moving these slowly so I don't set that off again. All right, so what else can we put there? Is there some geometry here? Well, sure there is. So we can a couple of different ways we could work at it. Working from that pivot to this pivot. Okay, so we do have a corner pocket here. We don't have a golden, but we have a corner pocket nonetheless right at structure. So if that's going to go and we're going to get that reaction, so 80% odds as long as that pivot holds. Now that pivot breaks. Now we have to redraw. But you can be a seller right there. In fact, we were looking at this in the group here, in the day trading group here, as we came to that pivot. So if you were down on we're on tick charts here looking as we approach that was a natural spot. So this move here, if you're a day trader, what did we get there? That's 83 and the low here is at 48. Right? I mean, it doesn't look like much when you're looking at here on a 60-minute, but if you're in on a some of the smaller degrees here that we'd be looking at in the day trading room, that's a hell of a little trade right there, right? You're in that in a 2 lot, you can call it a day. So we come down here, here's the target now for the larger degree. So what you'd want to be looking for on the assumption that we have a pivot here that's significant. So we're close to the 50, granted, right? We had to go back here to this B wave. We're close to the 50, we've got a corner, we've got structure. You could do this two ways. You could wait for a move further down and then wait for the first pullback, trying to get into what could be just the one wave. If we're going down here, well, we're going to do it through an Elliott count and we'll have subdivision. So if we go something, I'm just eyeballing here, something like this to get us down here. Right? Well, this could just be the start of the one wave of the one wave. 2, 3, 4, and 5. So this will need 5, 3, 5, 3, 5. So within that, right now, if we took it from an hourly, well, we'd do it to a 15-minute. Right, we're looking for 5 to come down. So far, it looks like maybe we've got a 1, 2, and we're going to continue to go through, and maybe it's just the one of the one. Right? There's no way to tell other than we have a potential pivot here that's technically significant. Right, so if we start to go, right now we're looking for opportunities to get on board on the short side, whether you're trading the corner pocket, whether you're trading the structure, whether you're trading the Elliott count. Look here, if you're selling this, well, we know where we're out, right? We know if it breaks that pivot, we want to be out. So since you've missed the turn, right, if you were just looking at this now, right, if you're just coming at this, and you've missed that turn, well, now we want to wait and get something to complete. We're waiting for the next retracement. So if this is going to continue to come down, you want to try and get the first pullback and look for that to continue. So we have a low, a retrace, and then we get a higher low, and then a low, and then a lower low coming to get right. So you see what I'm after here, right? So if we come down here and then we get a retrace and then we break, now we've got a series. We've got a higher low, regardless of where that goes. We get a lower high, and then the break here we get a lower low. So potentially a new trend starting, and potentially a new Elliott count. Is that could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Maybe it gives us our one wave. So in terms of the larger degree here, now let me go back out to that 4 hour. Right now, this is just, you can't do much until we get more distance from this pivot to know whether or not we've got a good wave 4 in there. If we do, that implies substantially lower prices here. So if this is going to go A, B, C and finish down here, well, that doesn't mean that the correction is necessarily over. So if we pull out, let's try, let's see what an 8 hour does for us. Look here. Oh, come on. Trading view. You gonna lock up on me here? Maybe I can't do that. I don't see that often. Okay, there we go. I don't know what that was about. Okay, so let me pull this off. All right, so if we're coming down to a C wave here, so let's move this over here. Note here, a nice low volume node. All right, as we come to, as you can see it, why that's there. So we pull this over here, right? So we can see that we've got structure here. So we got this low volume node here. You can pull it up a little bit more here to get that low here. So that sets us up. So if we're pulling just from, let's get all of it here. So from this last pivot, so you can see here's if this is completing and we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now let me change that. Get that. Oh, intermediate's fine. Okay, so if that's from this low, so the first thing I want to do is pay attention to where I am relative to that low, right? So if I pull up, okay, we're through the 50. Look where this lines up. We are literally, do you see that? We are literally, that's the golden zone right there. Right, so we'd have the wave 1 pivot here. So if this is going to keep coming down, this is a very reasonable target to have here. If this is going to continue to work in this direction, that's an obvious target to be working from. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that we're over yet, because that's, I got to go out to a daily here and get a sense. So right now we're just looking at a retracement off of this last move, right? So that's the that's the Trump rally, right? So this is the Trump reality, right? Sorry, I didn't mean you want to keep my politics out of it, but here's the Trump illusion. This is the Trump reality, as far as I'm concerned, right? But enough of that. Okay, so this now, if we're going to continue to come down here, you have to look at all of this as structure, as potentially an area we'd be working towards. So it's not quite there to where you can say, oh, the pivot is in, but we have all the conditions you'd be looking for to anticipate for the start of it. Now, if that breaks and we have to go, let's see, we're going hourly. If this breaks and we have to reconsider the whole thing, we have to look at this as maybe it's an A, B, C, and we're going into a diagonal. Well, in a diagonal, if we're going to get a diagonal here to finish this C wave, well, we'd already be anticipating, we'd be pulling from the start of the 1 through the pivot of the 3. So already going there a little bit, but we actually don't overlap. So, kind of a judgment call here, but I do like the fact that this is a significant pivot. Again, as I remind you, Algo doesn't care about the Elliott count. So if we're just going to continue to move lower, that's, reasonable target to have. Put us down here. You can see I've already got it wicked off here. I've got an alert here because I want to know if we're going to get there. So I would be sitting here with this, like this, working off of that corner, fully anticipating, there's no reason to assume otherwise, that we're going right there. We're going right to that 618. Okay, so that gives you a target down here of, let's call it 2250. Now, all contingent on whether that pivot holds. So right now you've got, so that pivot is sitting there, you got a bit of cushion there. So what are we sitting at here? We're at, let's get it right on there. So that's 2582 and we're sitting here, so we're 20 points away. Right, that's lately, right? The S&P is doing that before lunch, and that's another thing that you should point out here. And we were talking about this in the day trading room today. This level of volatility that we're experiencing is very high, but unusually high. right? I mean, we look at the backdrop, right? We're dealing with a government shutdown and, you know, all of the issues in Washington. There's so many wild cards that are in play here. We've got the China talks. We've got all of the Trump madness. We got all of that happening here. So, yeah, right. So we're not quite far enough here to say, boom, that's the 4. But right now, as you sit here looking at it, no reason to assume anything other than that's the 4, particularly since we pivot at the 1. So this kind of volatility is unusually high. So we had it was a little bit of an aberration as we were in the holidays. So maybe you saw just the massive swings. That's because you just don't have the normal volume there to absorb. So you get exaggerated moves on either side. But this right now the one variable here that's just gives you a little bit of a pause. So if we take the length of the A and project it from the B, well, here's 100%. So I think I took the, let me get my 618 back on there. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so here's our 618. We get just through that. That would be a shallow C. So if this is going to hold, this will be an important pivot here. If this could be, what am I, hourly? So this could be just that little pivot that would be just what you'd need here. So ideally, do you see the advantage here? If you take something like the corner edge before we come down on the assumption that you might get the start of a 1, 2, 3 of what could be the 1 wave. Well, the reason I like those is because you got a very clear exit, right? I know if I take that, that's where I'm wrong. That's where I'm out because that's changing the count. Now the whole count goes from an impulse to a diagonal. So this is a significant pivot here. So I'm willing to try and play on that edge there because I've got such clear exit parameters here. And I've got all of the conditions that are there. So if that's going to be the 4, this is exactly what it should look like. Now, as this gets a little further, and if this gets a little further, then, you know, the degree of the pullback here, remember the pullback is always an attempt to try and break the high, trying to break the pivot, right? If they can't get there, sign of weakness. Now, the other thing here that I wanted to show you is, right, as you might suspect, there's going to be a set of median lines going the other direction. So if we go down here, now let me pull back out. All right, so note failure to make the median line. We don't make the secondary median line. So we know from Andrew's trading principle number 4 that a failure to make the median line on this swing, on this AB up pushing for the 4 is a sign of weakness, which implies a move equal to or greater than the preceding move that failed to get there, right? Which would put this equal to or greater than. Right, so now you're starting to look like a 1, 2, 3. But I remind you, that's all contingent on this pivot holding. That could break by the end of the day. So you got to be, you know, if you're going to look for something like that, you got to be very disciplined about the stop, right? It's got to be just on the other side of that. A tick is enough, right, to change the count. Right? So you can be, you know, 1, 2 ticks on the other side of it, allowing for a little slop on the edge. But I'd be maybe 2 ticks off of the other side of that edge. So the higher this comes, the lower the risk of the trade. Right? Do you get the pivot? Like I said, all the conditions that you'd be looking for are there. So by all means, please have a stop on it, right? I'm not, you know, to trade it, you got to use your own money management rules there. But that is setting up there. That's a potential, right? That doesn't mean it's inevitable, but the trade conditions are there. So we shall see. This will have to be watched closely as if that breaks, because this still. Right, let me take that off, right? So nothing says that this couldn't still get there, right? So this is still in play. We could still get there here. So if this breaks, you know, don't think, oh, well, that was all completely a waste of time. No, you got to draw, say, okay, that's giving me more information. If that breaks, then potentially we're going up to catch the median line on this side. Right, this was shallow, so we don't have the same. Well, actually, yeah, that broke. So this was shallow. We didn't make the 50 here, so we don't know exactly when I'm on a 60-minute as to who's pushing this. So we don't have. So here's what I'm trying to show you. We don't have this exactly. Right, it's a little. You know, could be the front run. Maybe they used the 38. It's shallow for a B. Right, for whatever reason that took, and it's already to and through that algo target here. But that little set area of confluence, the fact that we're sitting up here, you know, kind of feeds into that idea that this is potentially a corner that's significant. But stop gets hit. Okay, next trade. What does that tell you? Right, implied strength. We change the count, then it looks more like a diagonal, and then we reevaluate. But as that sits right now, be looking for that little scalp on the short side, right? So maybe you take a portion, and depending on how you're trading this, maybe you got 1, 2, 3, multiple lots here. You would want, ideally you'd want to be positioned to allow for a runner. So if you get that kind of a move and we start heading down here, that you've got one to take advantage of that. Right? Or if you're trading in options, I would still use that pivot as a sign that the initial analysis, may be incorrect. All right, guys. So that's pretty much what I see there. This looks promising. It's interesting times here in the market. So but careful about. I would be cautious about taking things overnight that are unhedged because of the backdrop. So just word to the wise. All right, guys. I'll wrap it there. We're gonna be back in a minute here with a look at the Nasdaq as well. Okay, back to you in a minute.